Good morning, everybody. We're going to continue the classic albums review series today and start the Paul Simon Graceland review series with our look at the classic albums episode on the making of Paul Simon's Graceland. This edition of classic albums, by the way, we're reviewing a VHS. This episode came out, I believe, in 1997. But I've found several conflicting reports that said it came out in 2014, but we're going to go with the 97 release date. Um, Basically, this comes from the old crop of classic album episodes, um, meaning it's about a little less than an hour and a half long, I believe. Um, and this one is so cool because not only does it um, it give you the behind the scenes look at the making of Graceland, but it also gives us a look into what life was like back in 1985 when Simon wrote, or when Paul wrote and recorded Graceland. It gives us what his life was like back then, and also it it you know it tells us what life was like for the African musicians, or the African musicians that he played with back then, because and we'll go into more detail on this when we examine the Under African Skies documentary. That's part of the deluxe edition of the 25th anniversary deluxe edition of Graceland. Um, because if you remember, or back in like the mid '80s, apartheid was still going on, and Nelson Mandela was in prison. So basically, you know, uh, people from South Africa and the surrounding countries were living, living, imprisoned lives too. There were so many restrictions on musicians, and I remember reading or hearing about the trouble that Paul went through, to get Graceland recorded. Is that some critics were like, "You're stealing the music, or you're Americanizing it," which was not true. He was just trying to expose, the Western world to this fantastic music. And so, but we'll go into more detail when when we review the Under African Skies documentary. But like I said, this comes from the first crop of classic albums episodes, and you know, the only thing, the only thing, the only thing I wish he would have talked about in this was the making of one of my favorite tracks from Graceland. called All Around the World Myth of Fingerprints, he didn't touch on that, which I wonder why. But these classic album episodes tend to just go for the more popular hits, from the albums and not and stuff. But we'll get into more of that when we review the record as well. So, like I said, this came out in 1997, and I hope you enjoy it. I give this 5 stars. Shot and produced by Anambra. Video provided by WeVideo. Screen recording taken from Discogs. Photo taken from Google Images. Achieved using iPicky.com.